Getting it real with RealChunWai on the hottest topics, frank, engaging and candid. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. The voters of Johor will head to the polls to decide on who is best to be their young berhormat. What do they look for? How well has these parties performed in the past few years? Joining us tonight is Dr. Pamela Yong from the Institute for Strategic Analysis and Policy Research, or Insap. Please welcome Dr. Pamela Yong. Good evening, Malaysia and followers from around the world. Tonight, we have a special guest. She is Dr. Pamela Yong, who is an orthodontic dental specialist, the Deputy MCA Secretary General, as well as the Deputy Chairman of Insap, which is the Institute for Strategic Analysis and Policy Research, one of the pioneer think tanks in Malaysia. We are privileged to have her. Welcome.
Thank you, Kosian. Thank you, RealChunWai, for inviting me today. Apa kabar from all the way from Sabah.
Great. Okay, Dr. Pam, let's start the conversation moving. We are living in exciting times now. Okay, in Johor Bahru, there's a election going on. It's a very crowded field. In many cases, there are 4 corner fight, 5 corner fight, and we have the opposition fighting against each other, and we have components of the federal government also fighting each other. Okay, now, Dr. Pamela, I understand that Insap has already carried out a survey there to gauge the sentiments on the ground, the feelings of the electorate there, as well as the new voters that have emerged, the 700,000 voters in Johor, which will play a decisive role. And we want to hear from you, what is the result from the survey carried out by Insap, and what are the key takeaways from this survey?
Well, we are looking at, Malaysian politics is getting a little bit more exciting now. It's like we feel that it's like you said, we're looking at a 4 or 5 corner fight. It's quite rare for peninsular politics to be like that. In Sabah, where like Air Asia, everyone can fly. Right, everyone can contest. And it seems to be happening in Peninsula as well. Yes. So it's actually quite interesting for us. And as a think tank, right, it's actually quite a breath of fresh air, because it's going to be allowing us to study all these parties that are coming out, and then the way they're putting out their messages, their manifesto, the candidate selection, how they actually, how they portray themselves publicly, and then how the public perceive them and how the public also accept them, will allow us this platform to study them, and then allowing us more information and more data to actually prepare ourselves for the bigger competition, the bigger war, which is actually G15. And our survey is quite, it comes down to the general gist, the general hardship that the people are saying, reporting back, is that survey is showing that the pandemic had hit everybody really hard economically. So we find that economic hardships seems to be the first worry, of the main worry of the people in Johor.
Yes.
And we have people reporting as high as about 40% saying that they've only got about 3 months of saving left.
Oh.
And as high as 30%, saying that they have no more savings. So really, I think this state election, the people of Johor are really, really seriously looking at a stable government with a strong mandate to get them out of this. I think basically this is what they're looking at. They're looking at anybody, any government that could actually provide them with the basic, address the basic bread and butter issues. And I don't think they're looking at anything that's, any big fanfare. They're not looking at a castle in the air kind of promises, but down to the basics. If you can, resolve my worries, you're it. So I think they're looking back at a stable government with a strong mandate.
Yeah, I think if any of us who have been to Johor of late, we have noticed that how deserted Johor Bahru has been. The absence of tourists, from the day tourists from Singapore, who will be spending a lot of money in Johor, which will benefit the eateries, the shops and everything. That's completely deserted, and that the hotels are also has got very low occupancy rate, and that can be felt in the surrounding areas. Obviously, that the bread and butter issues are very important, and that as you say that money is running out, bread and butter matters the most. All the rhetorics on the infighting, all the posturing would have little meaning, enough of no interest to anyone who has got bills to pay. So obviously that the importance of stability is important. Now, a lot of this, of course, is caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. The results of work being slowed down, people not coming into Johor to spend. Now, given the fear of the COVID-19 is still all over our head, and that the figures have actually gone up. It may not be so serious, but numbers are still very high. How much do you think that the COVID-19 pandemic will play an issue, will be a factor in this election? Would people come out to vote in high numbers, or people would be unsure, or that they will say that, look, why would I bother to risk myself coming out to vote for politicians? Why would I want to even listen to any political message? It may be just restricted to 100 people, but I think that I would not bother to actually come out. How much do you think this would be a play in this election?
Well, to say that, the pandemic is one of the causes of low voter turnout is not right to say that. There's a few parameters that cause low voter turnout. From our survey, right, we noticed as well, aside from, people are worried about, coming out in masses to vote because of the pandemic, but there's a certain amount of, actually quite significant amount of voters exhibiting political apathy, like they're fed up. Seems like, GE14 has left a bad taste, in their mouth, voting and then feeling really disappointed. So to say that, but we have noticed that the voter turnout, the pattern is generally low in Malacca as well as in Sarawak. And we've also noticed that there was an inverse relationship. The higher in the seat where there's higher Chinese voters, there's an inverse relationship. And then you find that the voter turnout is low. For example, in Sarawak, Padungan, there was a seat that was about 92% Chinese voter seat. And turnout was about 44%. And then, so that is what we noticed as well. But really, we would like to also make sure that, it's your duty, it's a civic duty to come out to vote. So yes, our survey has also showed that the Johorians are actually active participants, in politics. They will see it as their duty, the civic duty, to come out to vote. And our survey also shows that, young voters, 18 to 30, about 83% of them are also, active. They feel like, they should come out to vote. So to say that, everyone is expecting that there will be a low voter turnout, we don't know, because we don't know. At the end of the day, if political apathy plays a part, and then if the candidates and the political parties are actually able to present the aspirations and it fits the aspiration of the voter, and get them to be feeling excited to come out to vote, then why not? If you actually sing the song that I like to listen to, I'll come out and vote for you. So I do not think that low voter turnout is actually down to the pandemic. Yes, equally, you might find that the people from outside of Johor, might not make the travel to come back for reasons like, costs, border controls, and of course, moving from one state to other. Those that are in Singapore may not come back for the sole reasons that, there's cost implications. So yes, that plays a part. But I think generally, I would like for everyone to understand that, we all have our civic responsibility to actually make the effort to come out to vote.
Correct. Yep, I agree with you. Putting aside partisan politics and whatever our preference, I think it's important for everyone to take part in election, and that's your right as a citizen. And there's no point having election if people do not vote. So I think that's really important, especially coming to Johor, where it is a very urban area. And if you look at the electoral composition, actually it's racially very mixed. So it's important for people from all walks of life and all races to actually come up, because they will actually make a difference. Now, before we proceed with more questions, I'd like to just take a step back to ask you this: what is the methodology of your survey and the sampling size of it? Perhaps you can share with us.
We were on the ground, I think, for a total of a week, and then we sampled. It's a total of 1,240 respondents.
Mhm.
It was basically looking at seats, because Insap is an MCA affiliated think tank, so we're looking at seats that were, MCA kind of traditional seats. So our sampling was mainly from those seats, and then it was looking at a well-performing, we picked respondents from well-performing, medium, and then low-performing PTNs, voting centers, voting areas. And that's how we actually, and then the distribution of our samples were also reflective of the demographic profiles of these seats. So that was how we did it. And there was a few groups. We sectioned ourselves to north, central, and south zones as well. So that was how we did. And again, as we traveled through the state, from the north, here, central to south, we did notice that, the economic hardships that everyone is sounding. And then there's different, kind of issues, focal issues that is relevant to the age, segments. We noticed that the very young are worried about their future, okay, what the future holds for them, the employability, because I think they were hit, when they were just coming out of college and graduating from universities with nothing, no experience whatsoever. And then, survey has also shown that they are more likely to be sidelined or, out of a job compared to their older counterparts. So they felt that, they don't have anything under the belt to actually say that they are better workers, better employees than the older counterparts. And then we have the very senior, okay? So we all know that Malaysia is an aging population.
Yeah.
So, and, we have as high as 3.5 million who are above 65. So that's about 7% at this moment in time. And this figure is expected to blow up to about 20% come 20 years time. And then, so we have this generation that consistently is telling us they're worried about inflation, the increased cost of living. And then they're worried about whether, the nest egg that they've put aside will last them, will outlast them, whether they have enough, the monthly pension or their PPF is able to give them this at the least, some kind of good, standard of living.
Yeah.
So these are the words. And then there's some, they're coming to retiring, like, I need to extend, maybe I have to delay my retirement.
Yeah.
That's quite unfortunate. So then have those that are just starting, the middle age group, starting the young family, worrying about the growing kids, cost of education, and having to support their aging parents as well, and the increasing cost of medical costs. So you see, everybody has it, while it's the same that we hear, but they have their own, worries, because our priorities change as we go through life. So that is consistent with our survey throughout the whole state of Johor. And I believe that's what's happening in Malaysia as well.
I think the situation is more acute in Johor. The cost of living is higher because that you always have this the competition, comparison with Singapore and the purchasing power of Singaporeans who come over to Johor, and that has an impact on them. So obviously for the older population, already their salaries or would have dropped or they have stopped earning, and that with inflation, if they keep the money in the bank, their value will have gone down, and because interest rate is very low, so the dilemma is really there for the older people, and then we have the fears of the younger people. Now, obviously, the predominant electorate are still the Malay majority. Now, when you do this survey, obviously, it has no uniformity. Although we talk about our Malay friends, but of course, there are many groupings. There are those, if I'm not wrong, we have those who believe in the Malay rights, the national nationalists, and then you have those who preach the religious line, the Islamic line, and then you have the progressive liberal type. What did the survey shows actually?
Well, you know, they just because Johor is, they say, a majority Malay state, but many are saying that the Malay hold the key, to this election. To me, I don't agree because I look at Johor, right, as the Muhibah state.
Okay.
People in Johor are proud to call themselves Bangsa Johor.
Yes.
Okay? And then if you look at the numbers, I mean, to say that it's majority Malay, okay, fine, you're quite right. But it's only 3% over the halfway mark. 53% is Malay. So equally, there's as many non-Malays.
Yes.
Okay. So when I look at this, and then our survey is showing that the Malay voters are fragmented, are splintered. You have so many Malay parties, trying to be the support. You have UMNO, you have PKR, you have Bersatu, PAS, Amanah, and then you've got the newcomers, Muda, Warisan is coming into the play. So Malay voters have a lot of choices. So I believe, right, it will be foolish for any candidates or any political parties to just pander to the Malay voters.
Yeah.
You would do well. It would be good strategy for you to actually, cater, leverage on the other communities, the other races, the Chinese, the Indians, and the others, to even out your chances of winning. So, it doesn't just fall down on that one race.
Yeah.
I believe, right, the rhetorics, those narratives, the race and religious narratives does not play a part.
Yeah.
I don't think the people need that. I think what people need is basically a stable government that would deliver them out of this one thing. I'm suffering from this pandemic. I'm suffering financially, socially. So get me out of this. So I don't think they want to listen to any racial or religious kind of rhetorics and narrative. I think they're probably a bit fed up with that.
Dr. Pam, if there's one election which I find this is quite unprecedented in a sense, is that after the Sheraton move, there were a lot of push by the PKL, DAP, and other parties, opposition parties, who wanted an election, a general election, to be held immediately. Then, they felt that look, there was a need for the mandate to be returned to the people because that, in their words, this was a backdoor government, so we need a fresh election. Now, subsequently, after Sheraton move, the result seems to change in Tanjung Piai, and then you have in Sarawak, and of course, in Malacca, the votes for the opposition started to diminish, and the performance of the DAP, PKR, and Amanah was not so good. And I think they had second thoughts. In Johor, they said, no, let's not have election. And then that seems to be the sentiment of the party, that let's not have a general election too often. In Sarawak, it was very interesting because that it was the first time where the DAP leaders actually apologized and said openly that we did not do well when we were part of the federal government. It was almost unprecedented for them to apologize. Now, the votes of these opposition parties have diminished. What do you see in this Johor election for these parties, plus the new parties that have come in?
I think there are telltale signs when just before, after Sheraton move, they're all, we want to, because they were still, I think they still held some command of support, from the voters. But as time goes, as you're quite right to mention, that there's signs, telltale signs that Pakatan Harapan is losing their Malay support as well as the Chinese support. So it just seems to be, let's talk about the Malay support first, all right? Yeah. So in GE 14, all right? So they had the benefit, they had the advantage of who? They had the advantage of the Malay Midas touch of Dr. Mahathir, right? Okay. Yeah. And then after Sheraton move, right, the Pakatan Harapan, that coalition just fragmented, and I don't think they ever recovered from that. So it was just downhill from there. And then with the PKR leader, Anwar Ibrahim, he's lost his influence and his glow over time. And then now what they're facing is they're pitted against their own bedfellows, their ex-bedfellows that used to be in Pakatan Harapan. Okay, so you have senior Tun Dr Mahathir with his Berjuang, and in Johor they're contesting 42 seats. Okay, taking whatever Malay support that he brought to Pakatan Harapan with them. And then you are looking at the other ex-bedfellow, okay, a Johorian heavyweight, an ex-Menteri Besar of Johor for 2 terms. Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin's clout and command of the Malay ground sentiment in Johor, you can't, underestimate that. So he will take some of the Malay support, okay? And then you have the very young newcomer, Syed Sadiq's party, who was also a bedfellow, to Pakatan Harapan back in, G14.
Yeah.
So he would also be attracting some maybe young Malay voters away from Pakatan Harapan. So, and with Amanah losing its appeal pass with its die-hard, members, they would probably take away Amanah's Malay voters. So, it's dwindling. You can see the pattern. It's just taking bit by bit, their Malay support from Pakatan Harapan. And this downtrend is very consistent. Quite rightly, you said that in Malacca and Sarawak state election. PKR failed to retain any one of the seats. They came back with no seats. They lost all the seats.
I think they lost the deposits as well. Some of them.
So this is a huge sign that they're losing over time. So that's why it's no surprise that when Johor, when the state was going to be dissolved, they were trying to actually avoid that.
Yeah.
So I think they can feel it, they can see it themselves. So, and then we'll talk about Chinese support. Okay, like you mentioned in Tanjung PI, looking at the data, right, after Tanjung PI by-election, there is some support, Chinese support back to Barisan Nasional. Okay, you might say that I'm biased, okay, but the other think tanks like Ilham Center, IDE, Institute of Darul Ehsan, as well as RSIS reported that, so much so that the Pakatan Harapan vote share, right, in Chinese majority seats, okay, it went down between 27 to 38%. And most of it, the lion's share was taken up by Barisan Nasional. So, there seemed to be a downtrend as well in Chinese support to Pakatan Harapan via DAP, okay, which used to command 95% of Chinese support in G15. And this downtrend, you can also see it similarly like PKR. You could see in DAP, okay, the Chinese support was going down in Malacca and the Sarawak state election. So let's talk about Malacca, okay? In DAP Chinese majority seats that we contested, there was an average, a blanket overage, okay, average of a drop in Chinese support of about 17%. The biggest drop you would notice was in the Bemban seat, in the Jasin, parliamentarian, the Bemban state seat, where it was contested none other by their DAP state chief. The Malacca DAP state chief stood in the seat. They even lost to our Barisan Nasional MCA candidate. Okay, that was the biggest drop in the Chinese support in the seat. And in Sarawak, okay, let's talk about Sarawak. DAP, okay, only managed to retain 2 of their state seats. And then with the general overall with declining majority as well. Okay, so their state chief, right? It was a telltale sign with the state chief. I call him CCJ, Zhong Qianzhen.
Yeah.
Okay, he had to cross over to another seat, running away from his hot seat, his own where he was incumbent in Kota Sentosa to Padungan. Now this is interesting. Even in Padungan, yes, he did win the Padungan seat. It was a seat with 92% Chinese voters, and he only managed to scrape through with 50.4% of the popular votes. And the other seat, Bending, okay, it is 89% Chinese seat. And Violet Yong only managed to receive 40% of the popular vote. So these are all signs that, Pakatan Harapan is losing the Malay support gradually, slowly, as well as the Chinese support. So as I mentioned, the motivation of voting is mainly driven by economics. And I think the people
Yeah.
are disappointed with Pakatan Harapan's failed promises. And really, for this state election, the people are really looking at a stable state government for the next 4 or 5 years. Enough of this, hoo-ha, shift of everything, changing of policies, cancelling of projects out of political spite, okay? I think the people have had enough. They just want to go back to some sort of stability.
Yeah, but Dr. Pam, having said that, the importance of the bread and butter issues, I'm sure that there will be still a large portion of voters who will still care very much about good governance, the importance of democracy, and importance of clean leaders, okay, and even fresh faces, fresh narrative. That perhaps they even say that, look, we've heard this all and over and again, stable politics, stable economy, development. No, we have heard this again. Where is that freshness in Malaysian politics? Where is that fresh figure, that charismatic figure who would appear and take Malaysia forward? In this election, we still, in Johor, we still have people with baggages, okay? People who have been charged for corruption, who are still on the ground. Do you think that this would have any impact on the decision of some of these voters?
Well, the thing is, like I said, it's like it's national issues is one thing. I think the people of Johor are actually looking at who is able to get them out of this rut that they're facing, and our survey seems to show that Menteri Besar, Dato' Hasni Mohamad is actually scoring very good positive ratings across races. Okay, It's scoring average of over 50%. That they have confidence in him to actually deliver the economic recovery to the state. So I think people are looking not so much as they've seen both sides of the coin. Okay, they've seen how how the new Malaysia government that they voted has failed them, and there's something to compare. So I think they really want to go back to something that they know and they can rely on. A party or a government that has got good track records. I think that's what they're looking at. They're not looking at something fresh or new, something untested, something that they don't know about. I think at this moment in time they're a little bit cautious. So while there's a lot of narrative, saying that only this but really we're looking at the state election. We're looking at Johor, and the survey is quite clear cut. They're very happy with the government that was led by Hasni Mohamad. So I think that is what they're looking at: stability and consistency.
I want to bring up the subject of the new voters. There's 700,000 of them. They're only 18, and of course, those who are 21 and above, we have yet to put their vote. These are big numbers, and of course, we have someone like Syed Siddiq, who is very fresh, who represent the face of the young people. While he's from Johor, and quite a number of the leaders are contesting, they're from Johor. Of course, we're not sure whether that would mean that they will win. What have you found out about this 700,000 voters? Okay, I know that you have said that this concern about looking for a job, earning a living, having to pay for their debts, their loans and everything. Now, some have said that, well, there may be 700,000 of them. Actually, quite a number of them may not even bother to come out to vote. What have you detected from there?
Well, there's a lot of talk, there's a lot of excitement, with this addition of new young voters. I think roughly about 1.2 million to be added into the electoral for the whole country. So it is well, there's absence of data to tell us exactly. The unknown species. I call them the unknown species, and untapped kind of pool of voters. So really, without any data to actually show us their patterns, voting patterns and trend. So anything give. But to me, the addition of this Undi 18, this new young voters, is actually very exciting, because it's pushing parties to have to reinvent themselves, to actually look at themselves, to actually revamp, to have new ideas, to actually try and attract these young voters, and to make it to sort of create an environment where, youth politics and youth participation in politics is a must. So I think it's going to bring a change to the Malaysian politics and democracy, where when we have younger ideas to come in to tell us how they want the country to be developed, how to move forward from this on. So, I certainly am very excited to see where this is going and to see how these political parties are going to be, dancing around to try and attract these new young voters. And certainly, right, their mindset. Okay, our survey shows that their mindset is not at all like the older generation. Yes, they're non-partisan, they're unpredictable, but I do not think they're actually difficult to gauge. They still want the same things. They want the same thing like all of us do. They want to find a good job, and like employability. Want to find a good job with good pay. I want to be able to buy my own car, buy my own house. Have freedom of speech, peace, living in healthy, green, clean country. So it actually comes down to which candidate, which party can actually sound these aspirations to them well and sell it to them. I think that is where you win them over. So I think this 2018 is actually a breath of fresh air to our Malaysian politics. It really is showing that our country is moving towards, uncharted. Yes, it's worrying for politicians and political parties. It's uncharted, but exciting development.
Agree with you. Exciting.
So watch this space. Watch this space.
Engagement with voters, especially the young. Okay, now obviously they're in this age of social media, that speaking to the nobody and young people, or even most people don't read newspapers anymore. People do not want long text. Okay, people do not watch TV. They don't have time to watch TV. Okay, TV doesn't work anymore. But a lot of it has got to do with social media. If I followed someone on social media, I will mention his name. If I've been following him for 3-4 years, okay, I get to see what he eats. He plays with his dog or his cat, okay, and that he's fun, okay. He does TikTok, he does stupid things like dance, okay. Now, but there's a certain form of affinity and love for this guy or that person, okay. So I become his big follower. I shared all his video, his Instagram and everything. Now, many of the older parties, the candidates and even some of the leaders have actually are pretty weak when it comes to social media. With this new excitement, with this new world, okay, of social media, how much have the older parties like AMNO, MC, I might say, I mean, I'll be honest about it, when these parties stack up against parties like Muda, okay, they are still pretty slow. What is your view on this?
I think with following GE14, our voters have become more discerning. They're more astute. They do know that whatever you read or watch or hear from social media is not all that true. So they know now. So just because you have many likes, many shares, many comments, it does not constitute votes at the end of the day. It does not mean that you will have that number of ballots in your box. So to me, it is yes, younger voters will look at social media as a form of gathering information about their, potential representative political parties and the aspirations that they're trying to sell. But and it also is a two-way thing. It also forces it makes the other political parties or the politicians, want to improve themselves by trying to market themselves in a different platform. But our survey is showing that there is not one size fit all. You cannot just campaign on social media and hope to win. It shows that our older, the older voters, the senior voters, they still go to the traditional media, read newspapers, and they look at television. They feel that the television actually gives them the most accurate, no, bullshit kind of news, And the young are also, survey showing that the young are looking at Facebook.
Yeah.
But again, as I said, just because you're popular on Facebook, that you're trending well, it doesn't mean that it will
Yeah.
constitute to vote at the end of the day.
Right.
I think the voters are actually more mature, more aware. They're critical now. So they will cross-check what you're saying and make sure that it's true. So I don't think social media
Sure.
actually,
Yeah.
it's the be it in all
Right.
of the election.
It has got to be a hybrid of electoral approaches and tactics. As they said, don't put all the eggs in the one basket. You have to have different methodology and strategies. I'm sure that even simple things like showing yourself physically to say hello can make the difference for a person who is unsure who to give the vote. So the old method of meeting, what do you call it, the voters still counts. Now, let's talk about our good friend Shafi Abdal, since you are from Sabah, and Sabah is one of my favorite states, okay? I've asked him this question that why are you going to Johor when a house is on fire in Sabah? We have lost the state government. By right, you should be building your house in Sabah. Why are you in Johor? Why are you in Penang now? Because that Johor is it's a total different terrain, and it will not help if your party is in Johor is comprised of names of people who have lost in election, or people who have been asked to retire, or they have lost favor in their own party. So he's actually taking a big gamble in Johor. That's my feeling. But I want to hear your view as a Sabahan of a Sabah-based party going to Johor.
Well, first of all, I'll give them an A for the bravado and courage. You're quite right, friends, analyst friends are talking among ourselves in Sabah, we're just thinking, what is their, what is their game plan, Warisan, we look at track records, for any political parties, if Warisan fail to command, the favor of their own home state, your ship is sinking, in your home harbor.
Yeah.
You're trying to set sail in Johor. At this moment in time, there's mass exodus of the members and the grassroots leaders. And so we're just wondering what we're looking at. We're looking at it as a marketing expedition for Warisan, but really not looking at them making any impactful kind of inroads, for this Johor election. So I really, I am a little bit proud, that Sabah-based party is actually trying to make it, to be thinking big, making it in Peninsula. But I think the pragmatist in me, or the realist in me is like, Warisan, if it was all that good, I'm looking at the track record, you were state government, you were the incumbent government. And then, to say that, you were ousted, you would nobody can oust a government, a sitting government with, a strong mandate. You were ousted because, you just didn't have a strong enough mandate. And then as an incumbent government going into election again, and you still fail to command a majority to form the government again, says a lot about your, your influence and the support within your own home state. So I don't know. I am, I am trying to root for them solely because of Sabahan, but hey, let's see how this goes. But really, analyst friends are saying, like you said, your house is on fire, your boat is sinking, here in Sabah.
Yes.
What are you doing in Johor? But equally, it's a good insight for us. Any election is great for any think tanks. For Insap, it's great for us to study them, okay, to give us ideas to see how they, their marketing, how they're actually there portraying the publicity and all that. The campaign messages they're coming up with. All these are actually good, data, good things that we should actually read into, that we could actually use for the bigger fight that we'll be facing, which is G15. So yes, all this is all good and well, because it allows us more things, more studies
I also take a very positive and very optimistic view of what's happening in Johor because yes, it's a crowded field, but it goes to show that democracy is really still very strong in Malaysia, and that anyone can contest in an election, and all our election, even when the Barisan government collapsed, that the handover was done properly. And there was no riots or no form of fear. People had celebration, and that the people move on, and everything was properly done. I think that it speaks volumes of the maturity of Malaysians. Yes, Malaysians are all very critical, okay, and the favorite pastimes is shooting down the government, okay, and that. But I think that it shows that it's very strong. Now, whatever the outcome of the Johor election, obviously that the winners are the people of Malaysia, in particular the Bangsa Johor. Now, in closing this discussion, can we have the last word from you on how that you think that it's going to be a crowded field, okay? But do you think that the X factor would be the candidates themselves?
I'm hoping, okay, this Johor state election, okay, I mentioned, the Demi Bangsa Agama Negara kind of narrative. I don't think anymore. So it is quite. We're quite looking forward to see, how our candidates, this election campaign is going to be leading us, what kind of messages that they're all coming out with, and how they're going to campaign, in this new norm, where it's going to be a hybrid, and I do believe, right, in this scenario that there's an advantage to establish parties, the likes of, Barisan Nasional, for example, where we have our own core, basic voters, our machinery, well-oiled, well-established machinery, and then we also have our, strong finances and track record to show for it. Okay, but really, it's like, and then the looking at the plethora of, the little spectrum of the different characters that's going to come into play. That would be quite exciting to look at. They'll be presenting a wow factor to the young voters. Okay, but really, I would like to, for me, I have these three things. Pamela's three P's. When it comes to voting in somebody who's going to represent me, I would like the first P to be passion. Okay, you have to have the passion to be a public servant. It's more than public servant. Okay, your time does not belong to you. You have to be, willing to serve. And our survey shows that this is the number one thing that the people want. That my representative, my Wakil Rakyat, is someone who is diligent and who is committed to serve me. So passion is one, the first P. The second P would be principles. Okay, you have to be of high integrity. Our situation is as such because we have so many politicians, because of their own personal political agenda. They change affiliations, they change the stand just to suit their own gain. So principles will play a huge part, in picking the Wakil Rakyat. And then, of course, third would be good policies. This is where, what politicians and political parties and the government is for, to actually come up with good policies that would actually, in this time of need, in this time when everybody is facing basic bread and butter issues, that is a time when we need the government to have a people-centric kind of policies that would get everybody, all Malaysians, it doesn't matter whether you color, race, religion, it will just apply to you and it'll be good for everybody else. And yes, failed promises, no go. This kind of, pie in the air manifesto, just be very careful with what you say in your election campaign.
Thank you, Dr. Pam, for joining us tonight. To all viewers in Malaysia and all around the world, especially in Johor, please join Dr. Pamela Yong and myself on social media. Please follow us. Please subscribe. Thank you and good night.
Thank you. Good night.